All right, so we're going to talk about doing a system of equations when you have three equations and three unknowns. The first thing I like to do is look at my equations, and if they're ugly, I try to clean them up. Now, what do I mean by that? For me, it's easiest to just make sure all the variables are on the left and that the numbers are on the right. And I also like to make sure that I don't have fractions because those hurt my head. So for instance, in the second equation, I just recopied the first because it looks pretty good. The second equation, there's fractions. So the way you can get rid of those fractions, it's called clearing fractions. You can multiply by the least common denominator. So 8 is a number that both of these go into. So I'm going to distribute an 8 to all three terms. So 8 times 1/8, those will cancel and just leave me with an s minus what's 1/2 of 8? That would be a 4. And then 3 times 8 is 24. So that looks a lot prettier than it did before. And then this final equation, I'm actually going to go ahead and move this variable over to the other side to begin with, just because I don't like it over there on the right. So here are my three equations and my three unknowns in a prettier form. Now what I like to do is pick any two equations, and this isn't just a me thing, by the way. This is probably how you should always do it. Pick any two equations and then decide, what to solve for. So for instance, I'm going to take this bottom one and I'm going to get the s by itself. Okay, so I'm going to come down here. And if I get the s by itself, if I isolate it, that's going to end up being 24 plus 4t, right? I just move the 4t to the other side by adding it. And once you rewrite that, you are able to do what with it? Well, I don't like this at all. What shall I do? Okay, forget the first equation. There's no s up there, people. Like, I was going to pick this equation, but there's no s for me to plug into it. So let me change my mind and choose these two. So if I took this equation and got s by itself, I'm now going to take all of this and plug it into the s in another equation. So this is your substitution method you've probably been working on. Just like that, okay? Whee! That's an 8. It looks upset. Let's try that again. Okay, great. So now what do? Now I'm just going to get the t and the r over here together because they're friends, and then I'm going to subtract the 24. So minus 24 minus 24, I believe that's a negative 16. Now, once you do a substitution, box that answer because that is a good equation that we're going to use on our next step. And what the next step involves is trying to get rid of a t or an r. This is where your third equation comes into play. All right, so sometimes you may have to do grouping these two together or another two together and try to get the s isolated, do the whole thing again. But this is actually a pretty easy problem because my other equation that was listed also has an r and a t. So if I just recopy it right here, notice there's no s, so I don't even have to worry about like a three-part substitution problem. I'm just going to take these two equations now and do normal substitution like you've been doing in class all along. So for me, that means let me get this r by itself. So if I want to isolate this r, I need to add the 3t to the other side, and then I'm going to divide everybody by -1. Awesome. Now, this is the r. All of this is going to get plugged in for the r in the other equation. Okay, so we're plugging it all in up here. So it'll be 4t plus 2 times all of this equals -16. Beautiful. And then from here, we're just going to distribute. And the goal would be to try to solve for t. So I'm going to shut up and do that. Plus 28 plus 28. Eek! What would that be? Oh, wait, am I? I am adding 28, so that's going to be like a 12? Yeah. So t equals -6. Okay, so I'm getting t is -6. Now, once you find one of these, you just go back and loop through your whole problem to try to find everything else. So what that means for me is I'd take it and plug it in, the one I just left behind, and find my r. So -14 plus 18, so r would be 4. So I've got t is -6, r is 4, and then we have to find s. Well, s, we could use either one of our equations from before. So somewhere, here we go, here's an s equation from up top. So into that equation, I will plug s equals 24 plus 4t, and my t is what? -6. So it looks like in this problem, s is 0. So s is 0, t is -6, and r is 4. And that is how you can handle 3 equations at one time. Lots of work, lots of plugging things into other things, and hopefully the arrow system works for you. But you're not going to learn it by watching, you're going to learn it by doing. So give it a try, and if you get stuck, you can go back and watch the video again.